as Lily has mentioned, I'm Fiona Taylor. I work as a solicitor advocate, which means sometimes I'm going down for where you're sitting there, not all the time, most of the time I don't. But we don't need to tell people that. So for today's purposes, I'm running a solicitor, and I go to police stations and magistrates courts and crown courts and court martials and assist people who are sometimes under arrest, sometimes they're voluntarily but being interviewed, involved in criminal proceeding. Sometimes they're in investigation, sometimes they're being charged or summoned to court, sometimes they're pleading guilty, sometimes they're pleading not guilty. So right away. So the question I get asked the most at parties, it seems, is not, do you want a pint or you know, what are your hobbies, but how do you represent someone, you know, as guilty? I didn't have a police officer say to me, I couldn't do your job because I've got ethics. Anyway, what's the next one? So that's the question I'm inviting you to look at today. So it's how do you represent? How do I represent somebody I know is guilty? Just before we move on to that, I'm going to ask, just before we start, is there anybody here in a given situation that doesn't want to achieve pretty much the best result they can? If it's friendly. Is there anybody here, if they haven't already got one, who would like a criminal record just to hang around with it? Oh, we've got a couple. I'll see you later. Actually, I'm a little bit worried about Jess. You know that thing about if there's a joy every day, you look at the signage and so having the space. Never been bringing I'll read you my card later. So the general idea is no, not really. Now I just want you to remember, think back to the last time you told perhaps just a small, what we call a white lie, the ones that don't really hurt somebody else. That might have been when somebody asked if you were okay. It's a reasonable question, isn't it? You're okay, and how often you just say, yeah, I'm fine. What's the matter with you? Nothing wrong. You're all right. Or perhaps you just don't want to talk to them, perhaps you don't want to tell them what the issue is. It's just a bit personal, or you're in the wrong space, or the wrong people about, or perhaps it's just too much going on. Or maybe someone's looked at a delicious meal and you've said, oh, you know, did you enjoy it? Yeah, yes. But you don't usually say things that all. You go on with it, that's what you do. It's actually most finding nice. And you might not want to hurt the other person's feelings. Perhaps an occasion when somebody says, oh, you know, what beautiful baby. And your eyes for your teeth. What is going to be that beautiful baby? You know, goes on that's what happened to me, you know. Put it in the and leave it for 6 years and have another look at it when it's got hair and can speak. But no, don't quite say that. Or somebody's got themselves a nice car and yes, I know. Or somebody, you know, made an effort to dress up and it's, oh, you look nice. And you said it was actually with us. You're kind. You don't want to hurt people's feelings. Most of you, not some of us, you care about people's feelings, including your own. Some of that's reciprocal. Very nice to people, it'd be nice to back to work. There was some friendly people I was speaking to last week. Go be nice to somebody this week. So so maybe you'd even say you've done your homework, wouldn't it? Or perhaps you have turned your phone off. No, it's going to I've turned it off. I'm not looking at anybody at that point.
I'm still sensitive.
What's the liquid in? So, or maybe, you know, you just have a person who knows it. Just think back to the last time you did that. Perhaps it's a bit bigger than that, and you said you'd heard something that you hadn't heard, or you said, no, I didn't hear that when, yeah, you did, you know, maybe you don't hear people talking about somebody else. So what did they say? No, it's things. Or perhaps you said you'd seen something you hadn't, or been somewhere you had, or said you'd been somewhere you hadn't, or been doing something you shouldn't have been, and you're not going to fess up, you're not going to represent them. Or perhaps it's more to do that sometimes. Just a little bit of silence to let somebody misunderstand the situation, Sometimes you're trying to protect somebody, you don't want to upset people, you don't want the people who care about you to know there's a problem. Maybe it's just easier than explaining what's happened. Or maybe you just can't face telling people yet. So that little not quite accurate, but not quite putting somebody right on the situation. Or maybe it was bigger than that. In which case, can I just advise you now? I don't want to hear about it now. Exercise your right to silence, and I'll speak to you later. So just to check, can anybody remember a time when they've had to tell either a small white lie, maybe a bigger white lie? Is there anybody here who's never ever done that? No, we've got one. Right. Okay. I don't know, that wasn't really a lie, is that? It wasn't really a lie. Okay. So I'm going to work on the assumption that actually for the rest of you, we've established nobody wants a conviction if they can avoid it. Everybody wants the best outcome that they can attain. And actually, most people will lie under certain circumstances. So now we've got you all thinking like villains. Put that in the police station. Now imagine for one horrible moment that you find yourself in a police station. You didn't expect to be there, and actually, generally people don't expect to be there. Maybe something's rather wrong. All sorts of situations where that can arise. Perhaps somebody's driven into your car and actually suddenly the police want to speak to you about what happened. Yeah, whose fault the accident? Not necessarily under arrest. But actually very often the police want to speak to parties in that scenario. Or perhaps somebody's had a fight and you've stepped in to help somebody and suddenly you're the one being spoken to. You don't expect it, it's come about. Just imagine, try and imagine for one moment if you find yourself in a police station. Or not, I should add. Is it likely you want some help? Most of you, anybody, you think, no, you're right, or with the Irish. But actually, given the offer of, well, we've got a lawyer who can represent you free of charge. They might have 30 years' experience, and they can help you with this. Does that seem like a good idea? I'm hoping the normal course of events, the answer is yes. Even if you're innocent, because actually the police may not know your side of events yet, they probably don't, or they may have an assumption. They may have video evidence. I think a simple example, a young man I dealt with at the weekend in custody, and it looked like cut and dried. And it was one of those, we use the old phrase, bank rights. It's all going downhill from here. I'm starting to rack up how long he's going to serve, literally. And that's not most people don't go to prison to get it. So, and what's happened? He's been arrested for something else, gone to the police station, and they say we're going to do a strip search. So he's asked to drop his underwear, which he does. Cup full of drugs, bags of drugs. I do comment to them on perhaps, you're quite happy to use those after they've been down your crotch. You're quite happy with that. But of course it's not. And I'm basically giving him advice about credit for his guilty plea and get the most credit you can. His starting point for this, street dealing, 2.5 years, bit previous, etc. So, and then he raises a defence. The police don't know about that defence, they just assume he's guilty, because actually he is in possession of drugs with intent to supply somebody else. They've classified the drugs, they've already tested them on the spot, they've done a good test, they've never got heroin in the coat, okay? And all looks straightforward until he then raises a modern slavery defence, which actually relates to the fact that he was forced to do this under pressure of doing otherwise he would be seriously injured or killed, or that's what his belief was, or that somebody close to him. He summarised that a little bit quicker. So you don't always know when the defence is coming, but anyway, expectations. Let's go back. Would you expect, if I turn at the police station to assist you, or any other lawyer for that matter, that they would try and get the best result for you? If you hadn't done it, that they get you out, no charge, you're not going to come back. If you had done something wrong, they'd help you to get the best result that you can under those circumstances. Because we all want, as you read earlier, the best result we can get in circumstances. Legally. should add. What would you expect? There had to be a typo somewhere, I can see it. Then to tell you if you had a defence that you weren't aware of. Simple example of that. A little while ago, quite a long time ago now, a young man working in the garage, and he used to get bored at night, so he took the DVDs home and started watching them at home. And then he'd bring them back the next day, and they weren't sealed, so nobody was any the wiser. He thought. Never met a guy there who thought he was going to get bored. Didn't know about the CCTV, but showed him every night stamping up his DVDs. Take them home. He hadn't got Netflix, obviously. And so he was watching them, and then he was bringing them back the next day. He said, no, I've done it, no, you know, you're guilty. And most of you probably think, yeah, what's stupid? You have the requisite elements of the Theft Act, intention, no defined. What are you thinking? The appropriated property, treated it as his own, property belongs to somebody else. Was he acting dishonestly? Well, not kind of the most honest thing to do. But did he intend to permanently deprive the person who owned that property? And the answer at the time was no. So he didn't realise he was a defence. He thought he was guilty. I didn't tell him, actually, you have got a defence. I will raise it. And actually, he ended up not being charged. Lost his job, of course, stupidly. But wasn't guilty of an offence, didn't get conviction for dishonesty. You don't always know. So let's start answering today's question. Just going back, 2020, and there's lots of data online at the moment about this, partly because the figures have been thrown by the pandemic. But in 2020, the magistrates' courts in England and Wales received 1.13 million cases through the door. 74% of those were for summary offences. That means offences which can only be dealt with in the magistrates' court, or for breach proceedings, and those were involving admitted matters, so not guilty pleas. In fact, some years ago, at that time, the statistic for people pleading guilty was 95%. Seems to have gone down a little bit. Less than 10% of those have gone to the Crown Court, so in most cases actually dealt with the magistrates' court. Over 99% of those cases that went to the Crown Court, the people were represented. And of the Crown Court cases, 65% listed for trial, but actually 70% end up pleading guilty of those. So most people plead guilty. So when you start saying, well, how do you represent somebody you know is guilty? I'll do it all day. It's the main part of my job. So why do I represent somebody I know is guilty? Most of my work is legally aided, so it's paid for by the government. And I want a duty solicitor load to the court, I want a duty solicitor load to the police station, I apply for legal aid for people, those are all within the legal aid scheme. I'm not allowed to just say, oh, I don't like you, I'm not going to represent you, because the duty solicitor scheme expects me to represent everybody who walks through the door. Well, actually, 95% of them, of the cases to the police station, I'm expected to take that call. Otherwise, I don't keep the contract. Because what I'm going to do is say, oh, I don't like them. Or actually, I'm assuming they're guilty because it sounds like they're guilty. If I didn't represent guilty people, she would have a job. It wouldn't take long at all. But the other thing is Article 6 of the Human Rights Act, right to a fair trial. We have an entitlement to be represented when you're facing criminal proceedings. We have the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, which provides that if you are being interviewed under caution, you are entitled to assistance in your mind free of charge, whatever your means. So there's an expectation that people should be protected. And in terms of, I can't just say, oh, you know, whatever you're charged with, oh, that's too, well, I'm not going to deal with that, I don't deal with this. You don't always know what it's going to be till you get there. Last week, I was told at the outset, it's a possession of an offensive weapon. Come man in the street, possession of a hammer. And I'm starting to ask questions. Has it been used offensively? Because that's not legally active use. And then by the time I get to the police station, there's 3 different incidents, 9 different allegations. I didn't know that before I got there. Because actually it's a progressive situation, just as it would be if I went for somebody charged with or being interviewed for greatest bodily harm and the person dies. Changes. shifting situation. So you've got to deal with all of those things, and you've got to try and do that impartially. Are the circumstances in which case the circumstances in which I might not act would have to be if there's a conflict of interest, so I can't properly represent the client to the best of my ability. And the only two usual reasons for that are either I have a professional conflict, such as a client telling me one thing and then later telling me something completely different, and that they're not really good reason for that, or possibly a personal conflict in terms of fact, personal and professional, when the guy who burgled my house then got arrested for the burglary. And and asked for me at the police station. Subtle touch, I thought. Oh, and along and he said, Fiona, they, oh, this is on the phone. They said they took all that, they took all this property, and I said they checked all that last time, and you'd be able to identify it. Subtle, I said. And then I went around and laid out property, and police thought, what are you doing there? They asked them for the property. And I figured out a few information to see what was there. Oh, those are those dodgy earrings. I don't want to tell them that because they had those at university. They're nasty. Why do I do that? So, but it was unfortunate. But that was the case where I didn't get to the find on paper. No, that's not just what your role is as assistant at the police station or the magistrate's court. That's right, I think so, you know. You advise on procedure, you advise on the strength of the evidence against your client, where the case is going to be dealt with, magistrates, court, crown court, what the choices are, the timescale for proceedings, how long they're going to take, how to apply for funding, especially legal aid, whether the client's got a defence. Actually, it'd also be advising other people who might be able to assist for free, like the CAB if I can't, whether there are grounds to appeal. What further steps to take? How to complain about me? That's great. On the elements of the offences, strength of the evidence, potential defences, based on instructions given. I'm not one of these lawyers who says, oh, right, well, these are all the possible defences, so I'd go with that one if I were you. Because actually, I think that might be kind of totally inappropriate. It is totally inappropriate in case there's a step in it. So what I do is ask for my client's version of events and then advise on the basis of what you're saying if they have a defence. Allocation of which court, witness requirements, you know, actually you need to contact your mates. If they've got details on social media and all that you've just claimed, get them to keep the evidence before it gets destroyed. Likely sentence, how long it's going to take, credit for guilty pleas, who does what in court, funding, legal aid litigation, and instructing counsel if appropriate. So how do you know if somebody's guilty? They don't all look like this face. Go back to what you were thinking earlier with a little white line. We had one person in the room who's going to remember occasion when they were this on. And then you think about add pressure to that when actually you really haven't got any money and you don't know how you're going to pay the bills, or you can't get to school. Most of you haven't got that problem yet. Or perhaps you're absolutely desperate, all the things that will go on. So how am I going to find out if somebody's guilty? Am I going to just believe the police? Great suspect, not always. Am I just going to believe the client? Great suspect, not always, because some of them don't always quite tell the truth. Either they say that they think I want to hear very often, not always even consciously. The evidence. Well, yes, but going back to the incident at the weekend, you know, there may be very strong evidence, but that doesn't mean that there's not a defence as well. Or can I just assume when they look dodgy, so I better not represent them? They must be guilty. But can I represent somebody who I know is guilty? And the short answer is, of course. But I'm an officer of the court, so what I can't do is knowingly allow somebody to lie to the police or lie to the court. I haven't met a client yet in over 30 years who's worth me losing my reputation for that. I'm not going to help somebody knowingly lie. Can I advise them to say nothing? Of course I can. Very often do it. It's the prosecution's prove the case, not your client. Your client might have all sorts of issues. So, according to the probation service, the people who go to prison for 3 months or more, 90% of them 90% have got one or more psychiatric conditions. If you think about the fact our prison population, around about 80,000 at the moment, about 90% of those people have got psychiatric conditions. About 70% of them have got 2 or more. And you're starting to think, hang on a minute, are we dealing with these people in the right way? Is prison going to be solving this? Approximately 40% of people going through the court, other than for the standard mental matters, that have some literacy difficulties. Most of those who I get to deal with, bear in mind a lot of motoring type offences are dealt with by postal people attending when they're taking a lawyer. People have problems with work, employment, with histories of abuse, with their upbringing, as Lynn's alluded to, with addiction problems, drink, drugs, emotional problems, accommodation, homelessness, relationship issues, financial problems, and if you're really lucky, it's only about 3 or 4 of those. So if you start to think these are the vulnerable people we're dealing with. Are they the ones who want to say, I think you're guilty, so I'm not guilty? No, you might. Do I represent people who are guilty? Yes, of course I do. Most of the time I represent people who are guilty. But what I do a lot of the time in police stations, often assisting with somebody to make a decision whether to put forward and without, and if they choose to do so, how to do that, and if they're going to make things horribly worse, not to do that, and if they're going to incriminate themselves and the police can't prove what they've done, possibly not to do that, because you're entitled legally to make other parties prove the case, and if you're in court, you're expected to do that very quickly for about 7 years. How can I possibly sleep at night when I represent burglars, murderers, blackmailers, and rapists? The short answer is actually it's a necessary part of the job. But what I can't do is start judging those people until you know what they're there for. And as a PS, the most unlikely accounts can turn out to be true. The people who are most credible sometimes turn out to be lying through their teeth. And sometimes the clients are innocent. And sometimes I make assumptions about that and then find out later it's wrong. So, any questions?